Welcome everybody to the Cheech and Kern.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Welcome everybody to the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast, Episode 2. Oh fuck, wait, I messed up.
What's up, Cheech? What's going on, man?
Ready? You're ready. Hey guys, welcome everybody. Wait, no, I fucked that up.
Oh, fuck.
Right, I'm just gonna wing it. All right, here we go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cheech and Kern Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Cheech, alongside my main man, Kern. What up, Kern?
What's up, Cheech? Excited today for this wrestling podcast. Been a while.
Finally, to get this podcast out there. I mean, we've been struggling to get this out there. Starrcade 1986. It's been 2 weeks in the making, and but we're finally here. We're gonna get the show out. So yeah, let's get right to it.
We've been suffering a little bit of technical difficulties the last week. That's why it hasn't been up. But we're back to
yeah. Actually, we recorded. This is the second time we're doing this show. We recorded it one time, and we had some technical difficulties, and then our schedules couldn't get together, so it was a little hard to do it. But we're here. We're back, and we're bigger and better than ever. So, yep. Now, before we get into Starrcade 1986, what about Global Force Wrestling? Of course, this was about a week ago, but they mentioned their roster. What do you think about the roster for Global Force Wrestling?
The roster is actually good. They got. I was checking out the roster. They got from the Bullet Club from New Japan Pro Wrestling. They got what's their name? The guy from the WWE that used to do the Master Lock.
Chris Masters.
Chris Masters, he's also there. Lady is there. They got a pretty good roster going so far. It's going to be interesting to see what they come up with.
Great. Yeah, I also seen they have the former Justin Gabriel. He's also there. They have Lady Tapa. Isn't she like is she the daughter of Jimmy Snuka? Or, I mean, she's one of the daughters of one of these legends.
Actually, she is the niece of the Barbarian.
The Barbarian?
The Barbarian. Remember the Barbarian?
Of course. He's in Starrcade 1986. We're going to talk about the Barbarian today.
Yeah, that's right. The Barbarian. That is his niece.
Okay.
And he's a former knockout from TNA.
Now, the thing is, this roster they mentioned, I noticed they got a lot of great talent and everything, but it's weird because they really don't have a top star. I was expecting an AJ Styles. I was expecting a Bully Ray. I was expecting one of these major key stars to kind of get that roster pulled together, but they don't have it yet.
You know what? I kind of like this way they're doing it, Jeff Jarrett and them, because you're starting from scratch, so you're going to be able to produce superstars that people don't know, but eventually will fall in love with. I mean, they did it with TNA, and I'm pretty confident he'll be able to do it with Global Force Wrestling.
All right, yeah, well, we'll have to see. Now, he hasn't mentioned any TV deals yet. I know they have some TV tapings coming up, but they have yet to mention what TV channel they're going to be on. He hasn't mentioned any of that yet as of now, right?
No, well, actually, I was reading about it, and he doesn't have a TV contract yet, so what he's doing is he's doing TV tapings to give to the TV audience, to the TV people, for they can see. It's like a pilot for them, so I know what it's about and see if there's somebody grab onto it. That's the last I heard of it.
Okay, all right. So we'll have to see. We'll have to stay tuned to Global Force Wrestling in the coming weeks, see what's going on there. Now, yeah, today we're going to talk about Starrcade 1986. Now, this event was on November 27th, 1986. And this was interesting because it was the same year as WrestleMania 2. And it took place in two different venues. It was in Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina. And it was at the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you think it was something that the NWA had planned for a long time? Or were they just copying off WWF momentum?
You know, it's actually hard to say. if you would have asked me personally, I think that they probably copied WWE at the time. I mean, it worked out for them. And you have, the WWE WrestleMania had 3 different venues. So think about it. That's 3 different income coming in from 3 different venues. I think it worked out for WWE. It kind of worked out for Jim Crockett here.
Great, yeah, great. So this event. Now I was reading up on this event before I started watching it. I'm like, let me get some information on this, and I seen they had a combined attendance of 30,000 fans between both those venues. I think that was a great, that was a success for 1986. 30,000 fans between 2 venues for an event. That was great, and it was in a closed circuit television.
Yeah, 30,000 in 1986, man, anybody, because even the WWE wasn't making 30,000, for a show at that time. But yeah, that was great attendance for them.
Yep. Now, we were welcomed to the event by ring announcer Tom Miller, and we had, of course, there were 2 split crews. Of course, it was Tony Schiavone and Rick Stewart were our commentators at the Omni, and it was Bob Caudle and Johnny Weaver were the announcers at the Greensboro Coliseum. So they do the whole presentation. They do the national anthem and everything. And we go directly to match number 1, which was in Greensboro, North Carolina. It was Tim Horner and Nelson Royal versus Don and Rossi and I should say Don and Rocky Cornotto. Cornotto. I was looking for you there. I was like, Cornotto, he's a Kern. Where's Kern in this event?
It's my people's.
Yep. Now, this was a good, solid match. It was a good match, a good, solid pace, I should say, to start this event out. But one thing I did remember, and I got quickly annoyed watching this match, was the noise that the ring rope was made. I don't know if you noticed that. Like, every time they would shoot them into the ropes would be like, I don't know if you heard that.
It looked like they were wound a little too tight. They were actually vibration through the TV over it.
Yeah, exactly. So I remember I was being a little annoyed by that, but it was a good match, a solid match, and I remember the pinfall victory came by Nelson Royer and Tim Horner. So they were the victors in this first match. Any thoughts on this first match, Kern?
It's a solid match to start off the Starrcade. The only thing about it that I didn't really know who these people were back then. I mean, I've never heard of them, and I still haven't known them.
Yeah, we're gonna go through a couple of matches here that actually, you could say they were filler matches because there were matches that you really didn't know who these guys were. But we'll get into that a little later on to these matches. Now, match number 2 was actually at the Omni, and it was Brad Armstrong versus gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. He was accompanied by Precious. Now, as I said before, Jimmy Garvin, he's awesome. I'm a huge Jimmy Garvin fan, and this was a typical standoff match where one guy would get the advantage and the other would get the advantage and the other guy would get the advantage and so on and so on. They had it was a typical NWA match where you had a lot of arm bars and you had a lot of headlocks going on. And I must say that Jimmy Garvin was awesome because he was very cocky. Every time he got the upper hand, he would start getting, like talking trash to the fans, and the fans would start screaming. He was a real good heat magnet for that time. And by the end of this match, the people were going nuts.
See, I love Jimmy Garvin. Jimmy Garvin was a great heel. If he would have wrestled more in this time, he probably would have been a little bit more successful than what he was, even though he's had a lot of championships in a lot of different independent wrestling corporations. He wrestled for Jim Crockett. He wrestled in WCW. He wrestled for World Class Championship Wrestling. But I think if he would have wrestled more towards this era, he probably would have been a little bit better.
Yep. Now this match, it was a time limit draw actually, and I used to like these time limit draws. I don't know why they don't do time limit draws nowadays, because it was a good time limit draw. The crowd went nuts as you kind of knew the time limit was coming up, so the people were getting anxious, and it was great. And one of the things that I really enjoyed watching this match was at the end, once they started going at it, and then Brad Armstrong started hitting on Jimmy Garvin. Jimmy Garvin went to the outside, and it was funny because as he left the ring, Precious, she went by Gorgeous, and he's like, "I competed, baby, I competed." So it was so awesome.
Yeah, Jimmy Garvin for it. He was great. He was an awesome talker, also.
Yep. Now, match number 3 was actually at the Greensboro, North Carolina, and it was Shaska Watley and the Barbarian. Of course, was it the father or the uncle of Lady Tapa we just mentioned? The uncle of Lady Tapa, yep. So the Barbarian versus Baron von Raschke and Hector Guerrero, and this was a special grudge match. Now, I kind of felt like this was a makeshift tag team match that they kind of did just to fill up the show because it was a special grudge match, and I've never imagined or ever seen before Baron Von Raschke and Hector Guerrero as a tag team. So I don't know. Was this a makeshift tag team at the time?
I'm pretty sure it was. I don't remember Hector Guerrero when he was fighting for tag teams and he was winning tag team titles. Usually with another Guerrero. It wasn't with Von Raschke. And Shasta Watley, also known as Pez Watley before he became a heel, and the Barbarians didn't team up often either.
Okay, yeah. Now, Baron Von Raschke, I remember watching this and I was like, man, I don't think I've ever in my lifetime have I seen a Baron Von Raschke match where he doesn't look old.
Yeah, Von Raschke's always looked old. He's just been around for so long, like Ric Flair. And believe it or not, Von Raschke right now is still alive. He's 74 years old.
70? But he's still alive? I thought he had passed away.
No, he's still alive at the age of 74. He started wrestling in 1966 and retired in 1995.
Wow, Baron Von Raschke. Yeah, well, he looked very old, and that's on every of the matches I've ever seen him in. Now, one of the things that I must say is that when I started watching this match, the first thing that came to my mind was Eddie Guerrero, because I was like, holy shit, does Hector Guerrero look like Eddie Guerrero? It was one thing that, he would do moves that looked, I guess Eddie used to do moves at Hector, because I guess Hector is older. But, this guy, it was like watching Eddie Guerrero fight at age 50, And I was really amazed. I was like, wow, these guys really look alike a lot.
Yeah, the Guerreros, they all look alike, but Hector and Eddie are pretty much twins.
Yep. And the only guy that kind of looks different is Chavo. Chavo really doesn't look like that whole, Eddie and Hector and Mondo and all these other guys. I guess Mondo's Chavo's dad, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
He just came, I guess he got his mother's looks.
Yep. Now, the early on this match, Hector Guerrero does a crossbody over the top rope to the floor to the Barbarian and Shasta Watley, and the people start going nuts for him. And after the Barbarian take control of the match, the crowd starts to chant for Von Raschke, and he came in. He starts doing the claw. He starts doing the claw here and there. He grabs what's his name, Shaska, and Shaska misses for some reason. He hits the turnbuckle. He falls on the floor, and Von Raschke is able to get the 3 count. And Hector Guerrero and Von Raschke are the winners of this tag team match.
Poor Pez Watley. I can't call him Shasta. It's just hard for me to. I know him as Pez Watley.
Yeah.
It was a good match. I mean, Von Raschke sitting there with the iron claw. I like that claw. It's one of my favorite finishing
claw,
moves.
Yeah, that's my finisher. That's the claw. Every time I wrestle my kids, my finish is the claw.
The claw. I like the claw.
Yep.
I like it when you grab them and they start bleeding from the sides.
All right, so match number 4 was back at the Omni, and I guess I'm gonna stop saying it was in Greensboro, the Omni. It's just basically one match at the Omni, one match at Greensboro. Well, this one was at the Omni, and it was the Kansas Jayhawks versus Ivan Koloff and Khrushchev Khrushchev. Now, I remember when I started watching this, these are the things, like as I mentioned before, I love going back and watching these old NWA events or WWF events, because you always kind of find like a gem. And this was my gem. This was my hidden gem watching here. There was the Kansas Jayhawks, and it was none other than Dirty Dutch Mantel and Bobby Jaggers. Now, I love Dirty Dutch Mantel. He's one of my favorite wrestlers, one of my favorite bookers of all time. And it was a real gem for me to find him in this event. And of course, Ivan Koloff. Now, Khrushchev Khrushchev. Once I started watching this guy, I was like, man, I've seen this guy somewhere. I've seen this guy. I know it. I just couldn't get, who he was. And it wasn't until I spoke to you earlier that you actually told me he was Crush from Demolition.
Smash.
There you go. Smash, not Crush. Yeah, Crush was the tall guy. Yeah, Smash from Demolition. And it was weird because right here he was supposed to be part of like these evil Russians, right? That was their gimmick, the evil Russians. But they did an interview with them during the show, and he had the best English accent you can imagine. I was like, wait a minute, why is this guy playing a Russian if he has the best English accent ever?
Yeah. He was billed from where was he billed from? The Ukraine or something?
Yeah.
From the USSR.
Yeah.
And the poor guy's from Omaha. Omaha, Nebraska.
Now I guess Dirty Dutch Mantel, as is his, you know, his as he, at least as I know him as Dirty Dutch Mantel. I don't think he was going as Dirty Dutch at this time, because they were supposed to be the baby faces in this match. The Kansas Jayhawks, of course, are going against the Evil Russians. They were supposed to be the baby faces, but for some reason they were fighting as they were heels. You know, they were getting the heat. They were getting double teams on the illegal double teams on the Russians. At one point, Dirty Dutch Mantel, he goes to the corner. He starts mocking Ivan Koloff. Ivan Koloff comes into the ring. The referee tries to take him out, and then him and Bobby Jaggers just start doing double team maneuvers on the Russians. So I'm like, wait a minute, who am I supposed to be rooting for? The Russians or the Kansas Jayhawks?
Actually, I think they were trying to be, because the Russians were always the heels. They were always trying to disrespect America. Actually, they were fighting for the U.S. tag team titles right there at the point. So I think you had to get down and dirty just to be able to try to beat these Russians.
Yeah, well, at one point, the commentators, they actually tried to do kind of a little cover here, and they were like, oh, you could tell the Jayhawks, they came here thinking very well the stipulation for the non-disqualification, because they're breaking every rule possible to beat these Russians.
Yeah, I like Dirty Dutch Mantel. I like that match. I think it was a good match. Dirty Dutch Mantel looked like he needed to shave a little bit, but it was a really good match.
Yeah, Dirty Dutch had that whole rug going on.
That guy's been hairy his whole career.
Yeah. So at one point, the action starts to get out of control as Dutch gets his whip and Khrushchev gets the chain and is able to hit Jaggers in the back of the head and allow Kozlov, Ivan Koloff, I should say. What the heck is wrong with Ivan Koloff to get the pin and retain the U.S. tag team titles in the match.
Yeah, it was a good. I like the United States tag team titles. I thought they were one of my favorite titles out there.
Yeah, it was a good match. Solid match. I enjoyed it. Now, this was another gem. This next match here, because I wasn't expecting this at all. It wasn't until I started watching the event that I seen it. I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. And it was Ravishing Rick Rude with Paul Jones, and he went up against Chief Wahoo McDaniel, and it was in an Indian strap match. Of course, they had the Four Corners rule match. Any recollection about this match?
Yeah, Wahoo McDaniel, what can you say about the guy? I mean, the guy's been around forever. Well, back then. He was one of the greatest performers you could imagine, and I really like that Chief Wahoo, that the Indian look. I mean, he played the part perfectly.
Yeah, and he was well respected in the backstage area, at least throughout the different interviews that I've listened. You know, Ric Flair, for one, has always said that Chief Wahoo McDaniel was the guy that was always well respected in the ring, kind of like the Undertaker status now. You know, Undertaker's a very well respected guy. And that was Chief Wahoo McDaniel's his status back in the day. Now this match was very interesting because it was in a strap. Of course, it was an Indian strap match, as I mentioned before. And the commentators were saying that Chief Wahoo McDaniel had never lost this match before. And the reason I enjoyed this match is because at one point Rick Rude, he kind of got his fist, he wrapped around the strap, and he started nailing Chief Wahoo McDaniel in the head, and Chief Wahoo McDaniel started bleeding. And this is the type of matches that I enjoyed from these back in the day because, like, for example, recently we just had the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. And it was John Cena versus Rusev in a Russian chain match. And they were hitting each other with that Russian chain and nobody bled.
Not one drip of blood came out of there.
Not one drip of blood. Now, of course, I know we're in the PG era. They don't want to bleed, this and that. But, I mean, then you shouldn't do it a Russian chain match. You know, you should do some type of other match, a bull rope match or something. I don't know.
Well, then why was Brock Lesnar bleeding at WrestleMania if they're PG and they don't use the blood and all that other stuff?
No, but it's Brock Lesnar. I think Brock Lesnar got busted up in hard way.
I don't think he got busted up the hard way because I was seeing some video that they had on Twitter where they were showing when Roman Reigns, the referee handed Roman Reigns the blade and then he gave it to Brock Lesnar right before he threw him against the post.
I don't know. I've seen that same video. I seen that video you were talking about. And usually what they do is, you know, when the guy's on the floor, the ref will kind of touch his hand and the guy will kind of squeeze it to make, you know, just get a little snigging like, you know, I'm okay, everything's fine. And I think that's what happened there. I don't think he handed the blade. I did see the video and it does look a little controversial, but I don't think he handed the blade. I think Brock Lesnar was so intense and he threw himself that he just literally busted himself a hard way.
I don't know. That was kind of hard to say because if me and you were wrestling and I threw you against the post and you busted yourself the hard way, you'll probably be sitting there with a fucking concussion right now.
Probably, yeah, that's true. Hey, do you remember one time we were wrestling when we were kids? And remember one time you grabbed my head like literally grabbed my head and threw me against the window. You know the little thing that opens the windows. In my head, I had like this big ass lump that just went up and down like it was like a Popeye cartoon. Went. I remember that.
We put the order in on it.
Man, that was crazy. We used to do some crazy things when we were kids.
Yeah, that was fun though.
Yeah, so back to this Indian strap match. It was actually it was a decent match. I liked it. You know, Rick Rude got a little upper hand from time to time. He got the heat, and then Chief Wahoo McDaniel was able to just pull off the win. He got all four corners and he won the match.
Yeah, that's like the Undertaker fighting in the casket match. You know, there's not too many casket matches the Undertaker's gonna lose. So, being an Indian strap match with Wahoo McDaniels, we pretty much knew he was gonna win. But it was a very interesting match. I liked it.
Yep. So Rick Rude, of course, he lost, and then he immediately got up, and Paul Jones started attacking Wahoo McDaniels. Rick Rude came in, he starts attacking him until Hector Guerrero and Von Raschke, they made the save. So basically, I don't know if that match, if they ever did like a continuation, a rematch or something like that, because Rick Rude got the heat on Wahoo McDaniels. So I don't know if they ever fought in the future after that.
You know, maybe not, because if I'm not mistaken, didn't Rick Rude show up in the WWF like early '87?
I'm not sure if it was early '87. I know he came up pretty quickly after this, but I'm not sure if it was so fast, because I mean Starrcade was in November, and that would have been WrestleMania 3 by that time. Was he in WrestleMania 3, Rick Rude?
No, he wasn't at WrestleMania 3. Let's see if we can figure out when he took off to the...
I remember he had that WrestleMania 5 match. Was it with Warrior? I think it was with Warrior for that title, for the Intercontinental title. I'm not sure who he fought, if he fought at WrestleMania 4.
Okay. He debuted in July of '87 in the WWF.
All right, yeah. So it was about 6 months in, 7, maybe 8 months in.
Right. But he was let go by Jim Crockett in '86, and then he went to World Class for a little bit before he ended up showing up in World Wrestling Federation.
Okay, that's an interesting little trivia note there for you.
He was the newest addition to the Bobby Heenan family.
Oh, Bobby Heenan had a great stable of wrestlers in the mid '80s in WWF. I mean, that was one of the I used to hate him, of course, when I was a kid, but now growing up, you know, I've learned to love Bobby the Brain Heenan. He's one of my best performers ever. Of course, he made my top 10 heels.
Yeah,
my top 10 heels. So yeah, he's love the guy. Worked great. Now, match number 6 was actually Superstar Bill Dundee versus Sam Houston, and this was for the Central States Heavyweight Champion. Now, this is one of those matches that I said was kind of a filler match, because before this, I had never seen a Central States Heavyweight Championship match be defended in an NWA event.
Not on TV. I've heard of the Western Heritage Championship, Western States, that Barry Windham had, but I've never heard of the Central States Heavyweight Championship. I think that's probably the only time it was ever defended on TV at the NWA.
Now, Sam Houston, he looked like he weighed about 125 pounds soaking wet, but he was very tall.
Yeah, Sam Houston was actually a really great wrestler. He reminded me a lot of his body style of Kendall Windham, Barry Windham's brother. Mm-hmm. But Sam Houston, always the cowboy, he was always entertaining.
Yep. Now, I must say, I was very impressed with Superstar Bill Dundee. He looked great in this match. He made this match very interesting. You could tell he was the veteran at this time, and Sam Houston was taking Sam Houston to school, because this guy was moving all around. He was taking the match to him, and at one point he was actually winning the match. And the end came as Sam Houston was going for a drop kick or a kick or something, and Superstar Bill Dundee was able to grab him and kind of pull him. And as he pulled him, he did a ref bump, and he was able to get the boot out of Sam Houston. So he nailed Sam Houston with the boot. At this time, the referee's getting up. He sees him getting nailed, and he calls for the disqualification. So Sam Houston retains the Central States Heavyweight Championship in this match. But it was a good, solid match. I guess it went. I don't have the match time here, but I guess it was about a good 10-15 minute match.
Yeah, I don't have the time either on the match, but it was a decent match. And yeah, I would say it was about a good 10-minute match.
Yep. Now, match number 7. This was another gem here. I wasn't expecting this match. It was actually Boogie Wookie Man, Jimmy Valiant with Big Mama. And he would fight Paul Jones. And this was a hair versus hair match. And the interesting part about this was Raging Bull, which would always accompany Paul Jones. He would have to be suspended above the ring in a cage.
Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez. What can we say about him? He was very interesting in the early '80s, and after that, he pretty much faded away. But believe it or not, Manny Fernandez to this day still makes independent wrestling shows.
Yeah, I remember you in one of the previous episodes. You were talking about Manny Fernandez, and but I must say he looked like a shorter version of 911 in ECW. Remember 911 in ECW? He was this real big bodyguard type. Manny Fernandez, he looked a lot like him for some reason. I guess you would put the shades on because I guess it was the mullet and the mustache, but he looked a lot like 911 from ECW.
But you gotta remember, this was the '80s. Everybody had a mullet and a mustache back then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, the funny part about this, he starts fighting all the wrestlers that come down the aisle because he was supposed to get in the cage. He didn't want to get in the cage. He starts fighting everybody. And then it only took Wahoo McDaniel. He came down and he chopped him once. All he did was chop him once. And the Raging Bull went flying into the cage. They closed the cage and they raised him up. And the match starts. And Paul Jones, he tries to cheat his way to victory early as he nails Jimmy Valiant with a foreign object, and he busts him open. But the thing is, they show kind of a replay, and this foreign object was nothing more than a piece of paper kind of folded up.
A folded up cardboard piece of paper.
Yep. And Jimmy Valiant got busted open pretty good about this for this piece of paper hitting him.
Hey, that's a deadly piece of paper.
Now, Jimmy Valiant, he's able to fight back, and at one point he puts Paul Jones in a sleeper, and as Jones tries to nail Valiant again with this object, Valiant is able to counter. He throws him against the turnbuckle. Paul Jones drops the piece of the foreign object. He grabs it, he nails him, and he's able to get the pin count 1, 2, 3.
And there goes the hair for Paul Jones.
And there goes the hair for Paul Jones. And I must say, he shaved almost everything out right there in the ring. He left him pretty bald. And it wasn't until the Raging Bull was able to get out of the ring, out of the cage, I should say, and he was able to nail Jimmy Valiant. And then Rick Rude comes down, and he starts hitting Jimmy Valiant also. And they do this double DDT on a steel chair. And they left this guy dead in the ring. It was one of those really heat angles they used to do in the 80s where the two guys, they did a double team and then nailed him on a DDT on the table, on the chair, I should say. And you seen people in the crowd, they were all mad and everything. This was one of those angles from back in the day when you enjoyed wrestling that you were like, oh, they killed him. You know, it was a great way to finish the match.
A boogie woogie man.
Now this was kind of like I guess it was you know, as much as the Indian strap match was the gimmick match for Wahoo McDaniels, this hair versus hair match was the gimmick match for Jimmy Valiant, because during the show they kind of showed this promo for the Bunkhouse Stampede.
Bunkhouse Stampede.
Yeah, and during that event, the Bunkhouse Stampede, Jimmy Valiant had a hair versus hair match versus who was it? They showed he fought somebody else in a hair versus hair match, and he actually beat him also. And one of the things they were saying, the commentators were also saying that he never lost the hair versus hair match. So I guess that was his gimmick match back in the 80s.
His gimmick match was to chop everybody's head off. Everybody's hair off.
Now,
Jimmy Valiant, actually, I had seen him live here not too long ago in Northwest Indiana. Jimmy Valiant still actually goes out there and wrestles. He's still selling T-shirts and everything, and he's still somebody. It's great to see him still out there.
And does he do the whole boogie woogie gimmick? You know, he does his little dance and everything.
He still does it. He don't have Big Mama with him no more, but he still does the dance. He still does God, he looks like an old rock guy, an old biker or something. He's actually still entertaining.
That's good to see. Jimmy Valiant, the Boogie Woogie Man. Now, match number 8.
You know, Jimmy Valiant's a WWE Hall of Famer.
Really? When did he go into the Hall of Fame?
1996.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's why. Because I've been watching the Hall of Fame since they brought it back in 2004, I guess it was. That's when I've been watching it. I don't remember him going into the Hall of Fame. But match number 8 was actually Ron Garvin versus Big Bubba Rogers, a.k.a. Big Boss Man, a.k.a. Tractor Trailer. And Big Bubba Rogers was accompanied by Jim Cornette. And this was a Louisville street fight with pinfall or a 10-count rules.
And Big Bubba was accompanied by Jim Cornette.
Yep, Jim Cornette. Now, this was a fun match to watch. you know, these two guys were just kicking the hell out of each other throughout this match. It was a brutal dog fight, and the funny part was when Big Bubba was almost twice as big as Ron Garvin, but it was believable because Ron Garvin was just a tough bastard in the match. You could just tell he could hold his own. He was kicking some ass.
Oh yeah, he was known as the man with the hands of steel. He could knock you out with one punch, just like the Big Show.
But I mean, the Big Show is believable because of his size, you know. But Ron Garvin, yeah, you know, he looked like a guy you didn't want to mess with. So
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ron Garvin used to be an amateur boxer. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's where he got the hands of stone that he could knock you out with one punch. It was his boxing background or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So these guys, they go everywhere. You know, they fight inside the ring, they fight outside the ring. I think they go to the crowd for a little bit, actually, also. And so they start fighting, and the end of this match comes as the ref takes a bump, and Garvin is able to knock out Big Bubba with a pile driver. Now, this was an interesting move because the ref goes down. Ron Garvin is able to place Big Bubba's head between his legs, right? And he kind of does like that little wedgie, you know, he grabbed him by his pants and he lifted him up and he did that pile driver.
Hey, think about it. Ron Garvin is a small guy. Big Bubba, to get your hands around him, it takes a lot.
Yeah. So he does that kind of like little wedgie. And you can see Big Bubba's head like literally crack on the mat. And he got knocked out. You know, I don't know if it was a shoot knockout, but he got knocked out. And so at one point, then after that, you see Jim Cornette, he kind of loads up the tennis racket. And he nails Ron Garvin. So after this, the ref gets up. And he sees both guys on the mat. So he starts counting. And he counts them both out to 10. But right before he's gonna name the match is a draw or whatever, he goes over to the ring announcer. He's like, nope. There has to be a winner. So the first guy up wins the match.
Well, it had to be a winner because it was a street fight. You know, there's no disqualification, no countouts, no nothing.
Yep. So what this does is this gets the crowd very excited here, and he starts counting 1, 2. By the time he gets to about 6 or 7, I guess Ron Garvin, he was able to get up. But for some reason, Big Bubba Rogers was trying to get up also, and he was able to hold on to the ref. And as he's distracting the ref, Jimmy Cornette nails again Ron Garvin. He nails him with the knee. So Ron Garvin falls on the floor. Big Bubba Rogers is able to get up, and he gets the win here.
I like that match. I like Jim Cornette coming out with the loaded racket to knock out Ron Garvin. I think that's something that's missing in wrestling right now, is having that heel manager that can come in and interrupt the match and get his guy to win with a loaded tennis racket or a loaded purse or whatever it is. I miss that in wrestling right now.
Yeah, because you see very little managers nowadays, and I guess the closest thing you got to a manager now these days is Paul Heyman, but he really doesn't. He doesn't interfere because Brock Lesnar is such a badass. He doesn't need Paul Heyman to interfere.
In the WWF, never. I can't remember ever of any manager in the WWF besides Sensational Sheriff that will actually interfere in the match. I've never seen it. You didn't see it with Bobby Heenan that often. You didn't see it with everybody else. I mean, it's just in the NWA, you had James J. Dillon, you had Jim Cornette. All these people were always ready to help their guys out. You don't see that.
Or maybe this was in WCW, and I might be mistaken. But wasn't Harley Race the manager from Big Bang Vader? That was in WCW, right?
Yeah, that was early WCW, and Vader was winning the title.
Yeah, because I remember Harley Race would interfere also. But yeah, that was early WCW.
That was handsome Harley Race.
Yeah, because Jim Cornette. Oh yeah, that's right. Jim Cornette was the manager of Impact Vader, but that was around '96, and I don't think he was doing much of the. Interfering also.
Yeah, I was in WWE. I was reading on I can't believe what podcast it was. I don't know if it was Jim Cornette was talking. I don't know if it was with Jim Ross. And they were talking about that when he went to the WWF and he was a manager for Big Van Vader and Yokozuna and the rest of those guys, that he wasn't allowed to interfere. He was just allowed to just walk up to the ring and accompany his guy, but he was not allowed to interfere in the matches.
Yeah, but I guess he was brought in more of it as a mouthpiece because, of course, you weren't going to have Yokozuna talking because everybody would have known he wasn't Japanese besides him saying Banzai. And,
right.
And of course, Big Van Vader, has that guy ever been a good promo? I don't know because all I remember from him is Vader Time.
Yeah, he has in WCW. Well, he was in WCW. He didn't talk much in the WWE, but he was pretty much a good talker in WCW.
Yeah, but they kind of brought Jim Cornette as the mouthpiece at that time for Vader and Yokozuna. So I guess it does make sense that he didn't really interfere in those matches. Now, the next match is actually one of my favorite matches from this Starrcade 1986, and it's the Tully Blanchard with J.J. Dillon versus the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and this was a first blood match for the world's television title. What you think about this match, Kern?
This, just like you mentioned earlier about hitting gems, this was my hidden gem in the pay-per-view. This was one of the best matches I've seen. I loved the match. It was the first blood match. Dusty Rhodes was a huge fan favorite. Tully Blanchard, one of the greatest heels, and they were fighting for the world's TV title. This was when actually the world's television title actually meant something, when it was actually defended on TV and it was recognized, and established stars were trying to go after the TV title.
Yep, that's true. Now this was, you could tell this was a huge, of course it was a blood match, a first blood match, but this was a bloody grudge they had going on, because Dusty Rhodes, and besides, Dusty Rhodes has that whole Goldberg entrance. I don't know if you noticed, but they kind of panned out to the back stage area. They were showing the camera was looking straight at the door, and Dusty Rhodes, he comes out holding his belt, looking like a badass. He had the sides of his head shaved, and they actually said the words Tully written in black ink.
Tully, yeah, man, I can remember watching that as a little kid. It was a great match, man. I love it. The first blood match, I mean, it was different concepts that you don't see that often. It's stuff that they should do now that they don't do anymore. This was interesting wrestling back then.
Yep. Now the interesting part is once they get into the ring, they start doing the whole ring entrances and everything. And as they're doing the ring, not the ring entrances, the presentation, they're presenting the fighters. The introductions, yeah, thank you. It's funny because J.J. Dillon is actually putting a protective headgear on Tully Blanchard. And the referee, which at this point was Earl Hebner, he's like, no, you got to get the headgear off. You got to get the headgear off. So he gets the headgear off. And then as the ref is taking the headgear off, J.J. Dillon starts putting Vaseline all over Tully Blanchard's face.
Like the boxers, to stop them from bleeding and all that.
From bleeding and make the punches kind of roll and not bleed. And
that's pretty much what I was saying earlier about the heel manager that you don't see anymore in wrestling. That made the match interesting. It made the match, a little bit more comical. It made it feel more authentically as a good rivalry.
Yeah. So then, as the referee, he starts fighting again. He's like, no, you gotta get that out. You gotta get out. He gets a towel and he starts wiping Tully Blanchard's face. And as he does this, J.J. Dillon starts mouthing off to Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty Rhodes nails him with a bionic elbow. J.J. Dillon falls to the floor and he starts bleeding immediately from his forehead. And
it's funny because I've never seen Dusty Rhodes ever bust anybody but J.J. Dillon with that bionic elbow of his.
Yeah, and then I was wondering, I'm like, wait a minute, the bionic elbow, he has a elbow pad on, so how does he bust him open? But yeah, he was busted open by the bionic elbow, and that was actually a selling point for this match, because throughout the whole match, Tully Blanchard was trying not to get hit by this bionic elbow, and consistently, Dusty Rhodes was trying to hit him with it.
Well, yeah, that was his favorite move. He was trying to bust him open for this first blood match.
Yep. Now, I got to say something. I love Dusty Rhodes. I loved him back in the day. It was awesome. But sometimes he would do some gay-ass shit in the ring. I don't know if you noticed that. At one point, Tully Blanchard starts kind of walking, and Dusty Rhodes kind of moves back. He does this little move. Yeah, exactly. And he would go to the corner. And then Tully Blanchard would kind of walk a little bit, and he would raise his arm like he was going to hit him with the elbow, and Tully Blanchard would walk off. And he would do this great ass move. I don't know.
Dusty Rhodes always had a little feminine stuff to him, man, when he was in the ring for some reason.
I was laughing watching this, but I was like, man, did that look gay? But it was funny. Props to Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, but I love Dusty. He's one of my favorites all time.
Yep. And then at one point, actually, the cameraman, he starts zooming in on J.J. Dillon, and you can see J.J. Dillon just bleeding on the side, kind of like losing blood.
I'm surprised he didn't lose consciousness, all that blood he lost.
Yeah, no, and the thing is, I thought that when they nailed him and they made him bleed, I thought they were going to make him go to the back. I'm like, they're going to make this a one-on-one match. They're going to make it a whole blood feud, and JJ's not going to be there. But no, he's stuck at ringside bleeding, and he was bleeding all over his suit and everything.
Hey, that's what they gets paid for. James J. Dillon, one of the best heels managers out there at the time.
So the end comes after the ref takes a bump, and Dusty's able to nail Tully Blanchard with the bionic elbow and punches Tully's head until he busts him open. but the ref never sees it, of course. And as Dusty, he goes to wake up, kind of not wake up, but get the ref to get up. J.J. Dillon is able to hand him a roll of coins. Right? He's able to hand him a roll of coins, and Tully Blanchard nails him on the head, and he busts Dusty open. Now Dusty falls right by the referee. He starts getting up. The ref sees he's bleeding. He gets up. He goes over to Tully, and as all this is going on, J.J. Dillon is wiping Tully Blanchard's face with the towel. He's rubbing Vaseline all over it. So by the time the ref gets over there, Tully's not bleeding anymore. So he calls for the match, and your new World's Television Champion, Tully Blanchard, making Dusty Rhodes bleed.
That was cool. The Horsemen always had championships around them every time. Everyone was always carrying titles. And like I said, the NWA World Television Championship back then actually meant something. So it was good to see him win the TV title back then.
Yep. Now the next match was actually one of my favorite matches when I was a kid. And this is actually one of the matches that when you mentioned it, or we talked about it, I think it's in the previous episodes, is why I wanted to go back and watch Starrcade 1986. And of course, it was the Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal, accompanied by Paul Everling versus the Midnight Express, Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, accompanied of course by Jim Cornette.
Loverboy Dennis
Condrey, and they were accompanied by Jim Cornette, and this was of course the scaffold match, the night of the Skywalkers. This was as Starrcade was labeled this year. And I gotta say something, as a kid I love this match. Watching it now as a grown-up, I think it was a very stupid idea because this was such a dangerous match. These guys could easily have fallen off that scaffold and broken their necks.
Sure, look at what happened to Cornette after the match.
Yep, exactly. And at one point, so they go up the match, right? They go up the scaffold. They start fighting. They kind of divide themselves between, Animal and Beautiful Bobby are one end of the scaffold, Hawk and Condrey at the other end, and they start fighting. You don't see them take any high risk moves. They're kind of just like punching each other, holding, bear hugging, this and that.
But you can't do too many high risk moves. You only got like 2 feet, sideways of standing on. Yeah, I thought when it first came out, the match was interesting. It was something different that you didn't basically see too often. And yeah, as a youngster, I kind of liked the match also. But when you get older and you start looking at the match, you're like, what the hell are these people thinking?
Yeah. No, and then I when I started watching it back now, to review for the show, I was looking at their faces and their body language, and you can tell they really were not enjoying their times up there, because I mean it was very high above the ring, and Ron missed that, and it's trouble. So they start fighting back and forth, this and that, and it gets to the point where all 4 guys are kind of at the bottom of the scaffold. They're kind of holding on like monkey bars, and they start kicking each other into the first one that goes down is what's his name? Condrey, Dennis Condrey. The second guy to go down is Bobby Eaton. So then you have your winners with our, the Road Warriors. So then I don't know what was Jim Cornette thinking, but he goes around the mat, the ring, and he nails Paul Everling, and then he just starts running, and he goes up the scaffold. And as he goes up the scaffold, Paul is running after him, so he starts climbing, and Hawk is on the other end of the scaffold. So, but once Jim Cornette gets up there, he starts running. He sees him and says, ah! Okay, so he gets down. He starts in the middle, and then he goes over and under the scaffold, and he starts holding on. And as he's holding on, he's swinging back and forth like you would do as you're a kid in the monkey bars.
You can already see something was bad already right there.
Yeah, I mean, I heard an interview Jim Cornette did recently. I'm not sure if it was on Stone Cold's podcast or maybe it was on Jim Ross's podcast, where he talked specifically about this match. And he says that he was swinging up there, and of course he always says he's afraid of heights, but he did it, because he wanted to do the showmanship and this and that. And you can see that when he throws himself, he lands like straight down, right on his feet. He didn't kind of move sideways. He didn't try to land on his side. He just landed straight down, and he busted both of his knees.
Well, I heard in an interview, and I can't remember what interview it was, but it was Jim Cornette, and I remember him saying that Big Bubba Rogers was supposed to actually catch him in the bottom, and that he couldn't see if Bubba was down there yet or not. He let go before Bubba even had the chance to get up to him. the position, and that's when he ended up tearing up his knee. But the funny thing was that Bubba was down there to catch him anyway. He would have killed Bubba because he was coming like a missile with his feet straight down.
Yeah.
I mean, he falls backwards like beautiful Bobby did. Bobby swung and then landed on his back.
Yep.
Which was, I think, the proper way of doing it.
And Dennis Condrey, exactly. When both of them fell down, they kind of try to do it kind of like sideways to kind of land on their back, and they were able to break the fall, but he just messed up his knees.
That's the difference between an experienced wrestler and a manager.
Exactly. And as he fell, he was like, "Oh, my knees! I busted off my knees! Carry me! No, carry me!"
That was hysterical because they made commercials advertising NWA back then, showing that exact spot where he fell and broke his knees.
Yeah, so he had to be carried literally to the back of the backstage area after this match, but it was a good, interesting match. I enjoyed it for what it was. And then match number 11 was actually a good, solid steel cage match, and it was Arn and Early Anderson versus the Rock and Roll Express, Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton for the NWA World Tag Team titles. Now, what can I say about this match? It was a cage match, but it was a typical Rock and Roll Express match, where you would get, the match would go back and forth at the beginning. The Rock and Roll Express would get the advantage. For some reason, the heels will get the upper hand by cheating. And then Ricky Morton would be selling for a good 10, 15 minutes in the match, Yeah,
that's a typical match. But, you had Ole and Arn Anderson, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, or, members of the Horsemen at the time. And they were always notorious for taking their opponents apart.
Yep. Now, what I liked about it is that Ricky Morton always made the crowd have sympathy for him. He would sell and put those great facial emotions, and people just wanted to see him tag Robert Gibson. But anyways, at one point it comes to the point where Ole Anderson is actually going to body slam Ricky Morton, and Robert Gibson is able to kick. He did kind of I guess. He did what's that called? A drop kick. He did a drop kick on Ricky Morton, and he falls on Ole Anderson, and they're able to get the pin, 1, 2, 3, and just like that, they win the match. They're getting their ass kicked for 15 minutes, and just like that, they win the match.
That's it. That's all. They were running out of time, I guess, so they had to end the match kind of quickly.
Yeah.
It was a good match. I like the Horsemen and the Rock and Roll Express. I think it was a good match. It was for the NWA World Tag Team titles, steel cage match. It was decent for the pay-per-view.
Yep, I enjoyed it. Now, match number 12, I didn't remember that this event was the event that Magnus TA was supposed to fight Ric Flair in this match for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Now, of course, we ended up getting Nikita Koloff versus the Nature Boy Ric Flair, because this was when Magnum TA had his car accident that forced him to retire.
Yeah, this was Starrcade '86 was supposed to be Magnum TA winning the world title and making his big push, and unfortunately he did have that accident that resulted in his career ending. And Nikita Koloff, I still don't know how he turned face so fast, but he was the current United States champion, so I guess it turned out to be a great opponent.
It was a champion versus champion match, and I mean, it ended up being a good match. But before we go into that match, I mean, I wonder what would have happened, because as I understand, Magnum TA was supposed to win the title from Ric Flair at this event, and I wonder what would have happened. Magnum TA, the white hot babyface, going up, being the counterpart to Hulk Hogan and the WWF back in the days, and that mid '80s run where the WWF were just kicking ass, and Magnum TA would have been able to do something great and make the WWF a good run for their money.
You know what? I agree with you. Magnum TA could have been even probably hotter than Hulk Hogan. And who would even know what would happen to Ric Flair if he would have lost the title to Magnum TA? We probably wouldn't see Ric Flair the way we see him now. And Magnum TA, who knows? He could have probably went to the WWF and kicked some ass over there. I mean, the possibilities were endless with him.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame. But So this was a good match. Of course, typical match. Ric Flair made Nikita Koloff look like $1 million. I mean, this guy, he put Nikita Koloff over, and Nikita Koloff had that whole Goldberg look at him. He had that bald head, the goatee. He looked like a legitimate badass, and he did a good match.
Yeah, Nikita Koloff was awesome back then. I mean, this was Nikita Koloff at his best. He was big, he was strong, he was intimidating. And like when you said Ric Flair made him look like $1 million, Ric Flair would make anybody look like $1 million. He'd make me and you look like $1 million if we were out there wrestling them.
Yep, that's completely true. Now this match, it ended in a double disqualification. Neither man got pinned. They kind of just fought, and it was to a double DQ, and they started brawling all over the place where actually wrestlers had to come in and separate the guys. So it was a good heat match. I don't know, did they ever have a rematch for the world title or the US title or anything like that ahead?
I'm pretty sure, like we had talked earlier, I'm pretty sure that he did, but it was more like in house shows. It never aired again if they ever did on TV.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so there you got it, Kern. Starrcade 1986. What were your general thoughts? What were your star rating be for this show?
Well, it was a good show for me. I liked it. They had a lot of great matches. They had a lot of title matches. There was a couple that they put in there just for fillers, but it was pretty much an overall. I'm going to give it an 8.
An 8. All right, I agree with you. I'm going to give it actually an 8. Also, I would have gone as high as a 9. But when I think about these little filler matches they kind of put here and there, it kind of drags it down a little bit. So I'm gonna go for 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree, because most of these matches in Starrcade, there was like 4 or 5 of them in there where they actually build up to get to the match, and then there was a few of them that they just threw in there that you don't even know why they were in there.
Yeah, so actually we got a little bit of feedback. We got a little bit of feedback for this show from our main man over there in Spanish Harlem, Tony Culo Pesta, and he was talking about Starrcade 1986, and he says, "What's up, guys? Scaffold match and Flair versus Nikita were my favorite matches in Starrcade 86." And yeah, so he enjoyed Starrcade 1986.
I want to send a shout out to Tony. Tony's been one of our loyal listeners since day one. And he never misses sending us emails or feedback and comments. So Tony, I just want to give you a heads up. You're one of our, you're my number one fan. How you put it that way?
Yeah, our man Tony Culapes is always maintaining communication with us through email. So yep, big shout out to Tony.
All right, what about ready to do some emails?
Yeah, let's get into these emails. So what do we got, Kern?
All right, we got a couple of returning people. First of all, we got Oliver James sent us an email from London, England. This will be his second or third time sending us an email. And he wanted to know, what do you think about Wade Barrett winning the King of the Ring, and is it going to help his career? What do you think, Cheech?
Well, the King of the Ring, I guess to be straight up with you, Oliver, I don't think it's going to help his career. So I think it's no. And it's simply because the King of the Ring is not what it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago, where the guy that won that actually got a push and actually got, it was kind of, the King of the Ring used to be kind of like the Intercontinental title. You know, the guy that used to held that was always on position to go up to fight for the World Heavyweight title. Well, the King of the Ring was kind of something like that. You win that event, you get a push. But that's not what it's about now. You know, it hasn't been like that for a couple of years. The last time I remember somebody being a King of the Ring and being able to get the advantage of that was Booker T back in 2000, I don't know, 2005 or 2006 when he won the King of the Ring, and he was able to get a couple of World Heavyweight Championship title runs out of that. And before that, I remember Brock Lesnar back in 2002 when he won the King of the Ring. He was able to get that number one contenders match that ended up fighting with The Rock at SummerSlam and beating him for the title. So to answer your question directly, I don't think this King of the Ring is going to mean anything nearly as close as it used to be in the 20s before. So I don't think it's going to do anything for Wade Barrett's career.
I kind of agree with you, Cheech. I kind of think that the King of the Ring ain't pretty much what it used to be. It's a watered down version of what it used to be when, you know, Macho King was out there winning it and Haku and the rest of the guys, when it was actually interesting. And Wade Barrett's got a good, he's a good way to explain it. I mean, he's got a good look to him. He's good in the mic. I think the King of the Ring pretty much didn't do much for him, but I still think that he's got a great career ahead of him.
Yep.
All right. And email number 2 comes from Iris Martinez in Chicago, Illinois.
Iris from Chi-Town.
Chi-Town, Iris. Shout out to Iris. And you too, Oliver. We ain't forget about you. And Iris wants to know, what do we think of Chris Jericho hosting Tough Enough? What do you think, Cheech?
I gotta get, I'm gonna give it a shot. I don't think anybody could take the place of Stone Cold as the host of Tough Enough. Anybody who watched that Tough Enough series back in 2011 when he did it, I think he did a great job. The way that those closing segments of each episode, the way he would break down these guys when he had his final 3 there, was just great. But I'm willing to give it a chance to Chris Jericho. I'm willing to give it to see what it. Chris Jericho seems like he's getting everything Stone Cold is leaving behind the WWE, because if you think about it, Stone Cold was the one that started these podcasts on the WWE Network. Now Chris Jericho is the one doing it. Stone Cold was the one doing the host of Tough Enough. Now Chris Jericho is doing it. So I don't know. Well, I'll have to wait and see. But I'm looking forward to it. We'll see what goes on.
Well, I'm kind of looking forward to it. Stone Cold had his own, unique style of doing it, but Chris Jericho is always interesting. So it'll be, I got to see it first to see how he'll do on it. But I think he'll do great on it. He'll do great there. He probably won't do as good as Stone Cold, but he might, never know. He might surprise you.
Yeah, he is a good author. I must say that, because I've read all 3 of his books. Great books, great storytelling. Any wrestling fan out there, I highly recommend you guys read these books. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
And we got another one here. It's from Keith Jackson from Compton, California.
Oh, man, Keith.
He wants a follow-up from his last email. What do we think of the New Day as the tag team champions?
The New Day, I got to say something. I'm loving this new gimmick by the New Day. The way they recently just turned heel. They're the new tag team champs. And the only thing I got to say about the New Day is one thing.
New Day
sucks. But it's awesome. I'm digging it. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing the New Day on my TV every week.
Well, in my opinion, I'm going to go with the same opinion I've always had of New Day. I just don't like them. I mean, they have to do something different. They got to do something dramatic. Plus, they're all too small. They're like,
okay, well, you need to define small, because Big E is nothing but small. I mean, he's short, if that's what you mean, but I mean, he's a huge guy.
Yeah.
Oh, your connection kind of cut. Your connection kind of cut out.
If you're 5'10", you weigh. Okay. Oh, sorry about that.
No, go ahead.
When I say small, I mean 6 feet and under, because Big E looks huge and massive, but if you stand next to Brock Lesnar, he looks like a little kid.
Oh, but I mean, anybody next to Brock Lesnar looks like a little kid. Yeah.
And then, I just don't like New Day. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have a future with what they're doing, but the gimmick that they got going right now, I'm not too interested in it right now.
Okay. Well, I like him. Even Kofi Kingston being a heel, I think this is the first time he's ever been a heel, and I'm enjoying it. So I'm enjoying their work. New Day.
Kofi Kingston, to me, is a ripoff of D'Angelo De Niro. That's how I see it. Kofi Kingston, I mean, he's all right. He's entertaining in the Royal Rumbles when he's trying to stay in, but I don't know. I just don't see he doesn't do much for me.
A ripoff of D'Angelo De Niro, but D'Angelo De Niro was okay. Well, I guess yeah. I'm thinking of the Pope though. I'm thinking of the Pope.
Same size, same attitude, same everything. Only the Pope can talk a lot better. And had a lot, I mean, because they had the same thing of jumping off and making sure their feet don't touch the floor and all that other bullshit. True.
I must say something about the Pope. I used to love the Pope. Remember when Hogan came in to TNA with Bischoff in 2010? And
January 4th, 2010.
Yeah, and I think it was either the first. No, it wasn't the first. It was the second pay-per-view. It was on February of 2010. They did that competition. I think it was the Wild. It was some type of tournament where D'Angelo De Niro was the one that won it, and it was supposed to be him like a title match or something like that. I loved not D'Angelo De Niro. Why did I say D'Angelo De Niro? The Pope. The Pope was the one. It's the same guy, but he's the one that won the match. And,
right, and
I was digging it.
He did get his title match against AJ Styles. He just didn't win the match. And that actually was an interesting match, the AJ Styles versus D'Angelo De Niro. I'm surprised TNA let him go. He was one of their hottest superstars at the time.
Yeah, and the thing, I don't think they did let him go. But I think he, little spoiler alert for you guys out there, but I think he comes back and he does some commentary with Josh Matthews in the coming shows. So.
Yeah, I heard about that. Did you hear what's the guy that walks around with head? Al Snow in the commentary?
I have not heard his commentary as of yet, but
he was on commentary last week or the week before. And then, to me personally, I think he sucked. He had no enthusiasm on there. He didn't bring much to the table. But yet Dixie Carter, the next day, she's on Twitter all over the place saying what a great job he did. He's one of the best commentators in the world. Where the fuck do you get best commentator in the world? That's probably the first time he's ever commentated in his life, and he sucked.
Yeah,
Just
I didn't hear it, but I do know he wore the horrible jacket because everybody was tweeting about the horrible jacket he had on. So I do know about that.
He didn't sound like he was too interested in doing what he was doing.
Maybe I kind of like the Josh Matthews solo commentator, because when you think about it, Josh Matthews, he does it solo. He doesn't have Taz, or he doesn't have anybody to do some lame ass jokes and kind of deter from the action in the ring. Since he's the one there, he has to pay attention to the action. He calls the action, and it makes it much more enjoyable watching the product, watching the show.
You know, my opinion with TNA was, why did you let Mike Tenay go off to do something else? I mean, he's been the voice of TNA since the first pay-per-view opened in 2002. He's been the voice of TNA for the last 13 or 12 years or whatever the hell they've been in existence. Now all of a sudden they take out, and Taz, to me, he's never been a good commentator. Taz sucks. He's never been a good commentator.
I like Taz back when he was with Michael Cole.
Nothing to the table. Doesn't bring no enthusiasm. Doesn't bring no inside information. Doesn't bring shit. He just stands there and acts like a fool. I can go out there and do a better job than Taz.
I think Taz at the end he stopped giving a fuck. You know, he was like, you know what, fuck it. I don't even give a shit. He just started, blabbing. But when Michael Cole and Taz back in 2002, 2003, they were doing SmackDown, I think they were the best announced team the WWF had at the time.
Michael Cole made that team.
Yeah.
Michael Cole it's like when Bobby Heenan and somebody else. Bobby Heenan brings it to you, and everybody else looks good with it. Michael Cole brought that. I never liked Taz I liked him as a wrestler. I thought in ECW he was one of the best wrestlers. Even when he went to the WWF for a while, I thought he was one of the best wrestlers out there when he came and defeated Kurt Angle in his debut match. Mm-hmm. But rather than that, as a commentator, I don't think he's all that. I didn't even like him as a wrestler when he talked too much. He didn't sound all that good.
Yeah. Oh, there's Fiona in the background, my dog. So
she makes an appearance every now and then.
Yeah, she makes an appearance every now and then.
All right. We got off the topics of email, but we have one more email from Danny Dunn from Montreal.
Double D.
Yep, Double D. He wanted to let us know that he was actually at the Raw in Montreal last week. And his question,
by the way.
Yeah, it was. And his question was, what do you think of the Payback new main event? And do you think there's a possibility we might see the Shield form again together? What do you think, Cheech?
Well, for those guys, I guess it's maybe a week old. Yeah, it's about a week old now. Yeah, the Payback pay-per-view has a fatal four-way now for the WWE World Heavyweight title. It's Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and of course Randy Orton. I'm glad to see him in the World Heavyweight title picture. He deserves to be there. The whole Shield, I don't know, reuniting. I don't know, maybe we'll see it, but I guess the way I see it is Dean Ambrose was placed in that match to take the pinfall. They don't want to be Randy Orton. They don't want to be Roman Reigns. Seth Rollins, of course, is going to stay the champ until SummerSlam, and he fights Brock Lesnar. At least that's what I think is going to happen.
Somebody's got to lose.
Exactly. So I think Dean Ambrose is there just to take the pinfall. But I'm glad to see him in the main event picture.
But if Dean Ambrose takes the pinfall, that means Seth Rollins is going to have to pin him, right? Because whoever pins is going to become the new WWE champion. Exactly. And we don't see Seth Rollins losing the title anytime soon. As for me, I think the Shield reunion, I don't see that happening. They might have a good couple moments in the match where you might see them, making some good.
They might even do that. They might even do that triple power bomb they used to do. That would be awesome.
You might see some stuff like that, but for them reuniting, I don't think it's going to happen. And I think exactly like you said, the pay-per-view's the main event's going to be good, and Dean Ambrose was in there to take the hit and go down for
the team. Yep.
Right. But hey, that doesn't mean that's they're knocking him for any way or any reason.
No, he's a great performer, and he deserves to be in the main event. So I'm glad to see him there.
And he's a future WWE heavyweight champion in my eyes.
No doubt about it. Just not this Sunday.
And that is all the emails we have this week. So for everybody interested in sending us some emails, it's cheechandkern@gmail.com. Send us all your feedback, questions, or comments whenever you want. Let us know. Send them in before Thursday, and we will have them we'll be able to show them at the next show.
Yep. Now I want to get something clear out. We are going to be back up and always as every Saturday night. That's our regular time slot. We're going to go up every Saturday night on YouTube. We're making our way up to iTunes. We're getting that set up. So once we make it there, you guys can follow us on iTunes also. But we are going to make it every Saturday night. These last couple of weeks have just been crazy. We haven't been able to get it schedule wise. But we're going to be there every Thursday, every Saturday night, I should say, at www.youtube.com/Cheech and Kern. That's our official YouTube channel. You can check all our episodes there. Now, of course, the only thing we got left is before we get out of here, Kern, we need to talk about next week's episode. And next week's episode, we've been getting a couple of emails with suggestions here, but our main man, Tony Culapesta, he's been suggesting that we do an Attitude Era Raw. So I got a good Attitude Era Raw I was thinking about, and I was thinking about going back to January 4th, 1999. Now this was the Monday Night Raw where Mick Foley beat The Rock for the WWF title. And this is one of your favorite events, one of your favorite moments comes in this show, Kern.
Yeah, actually, I remember watching WCW live at the time when they mentioned that do not change the channel because what you're going to see is Mick Foley winning their world title. When I heard that Mick Foley was winning the world, that was something that I thought I would never see. So automatically, you're going to change the channel to see Mick Foley win the world title. I think that is a huge turning point in the the Monday Night Wars, and it was great to see Mick Foley win the title. And right there, when Stone Cold comes out to help Mick Foley at the end of the show, that is the hugest, most loudest pop you will ever hear on TV. I recommend everybody take a look at it and send us your comments on cheechandkern@gmail.com.
Yep, and that was very interesting, especially when you knew The Rock versus Champ. You know, you didn't expect The Rock to lose, especially to Mick Foley. So yeah, that was a big turning point there. And actually, this was the WCW Monday Nitro where the famous finger poke of doom went down when Hulk Hogan came back from his semi-retirement to face Kevin Nash for the World Heavyweight Championship, and the main event goes down with a finger poke of doom. Now, of course, if you think about it, finger poke of doom versus The Rock versus Mankind, there's no doubt why WCW went down the hole.
Yeah, it disgraced your belt, made it look like your title wasn't worth anything, and once your title ain't worth anything, your company ain't worth anything.
Yep. So there you guys have it, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, next Saturday night, we're gonna be up. Now that's this Saturday night. Just guys, this show is gonna be up on Monday or Tuesday. So next Saturday night, this Saturday night, we're gonna go up with this event with Monday Night Raw from January 4th, 1999. So make sure you guys send us your questions, comments, and emails at cheechandkern@gmail.com.
I appreciate you guys for listening. See you next week.
Take care, guys. Bye bye.
Peace.